happy to introduce her to all of you. She is Dr. Monishita Hajra Pande. She is also somebody who deals with English language. She is an assistant professor from the English and Foreign Languages University in Hyderabad. And even before joining that university itself, as you know, is a very reputed one. Even before that, she had worked at other prestigious institutes like IGNOU at New Delhi, then Ashoka University, and also Ambedkar University, Delhi. And she is somebody who has innovated and sustained a multilingual peer mentoring model, which she calls it's a language buddy scheme at Ambedkar University, Delhi. It was done primarily to tackle language alienation among learners as well as academic challenges faced mainly by regional medium students in the higher education sector. She has more than 10 years of teaching experience, and she has also worked on several government projects. Her PhD is in the area of English language education from the English and Foreign Languages University at Hyderabad. Her research interests are classroom discourse, cross-linguistic transfer of reading skills, bi- and multilingualism, and teacher education. In fact, I'm so happy that she is there with us. When I told her about this program and requested her to be a part of it, she very quickly agreed and instantly accepted my request. And she said that she would be happy to interact with all of you. So thank you, Dr. Monishita, for agreeing to be a resource person for today's second session. I hand over the proceedings to you. You can start.
Thank you so much, Dr. Binu, and thank you for having me here. I joined like 10 minutes before my session was to begin, and I could immediately connect with the energy that this group has. I'm just thrilled to be here with you. So much of motivated energy is what I can sense in this virtual classroom. So before I start today's title, of course you had a session on reading, and we will be continuing that conversation. You may find some overlaps, you may be able to make certain connections with what Dr. Karthikeya talked about. So please do feel free to comment, make those connections, share what you gain from this session, and if you want to bring some insights from the previous one also, it would be great to see how you're looking at the entire, like both the sessions in conversation with each other. So let me share my screen and we can get started. The title of today's session is Reading Strategies for Effective Communication. And the reason I named it like this is because many a times we feel that reading is something that is very passive. It is not an active skill, because when we think of communication, we mostly think of speaking and writing, because that's the way we actually express ourselves. But reading is an equally important skill that helps us write better, to express better, to understand other people's ideas, put them in conversation with us. And like in the previous session, it was highlighted how all these four skills have to work together for you to emerge as an effective communicator. So we'll focus on understanding what reading entails and how it can help us become better communicator. So moving on to the next slide. These are some of the objectives of today's session. We will begin with a very simple question. What is reading? We will try to look at some definitions of reading, and we will try to check those definitions with our understanding of what we think reading is, what has been our experience of reading so far. Then we will move on to different views on reading. We will tap into the theoretical understanding of the reading process. What do other scholars, researchers have to say about the reading process? Then I will take you through some reading strategies. Some overlap you may find from the previous session, like you were discussing the Paris acronym strategy. Some of them you may find them overlapping with some strategies that we will discuss, and some will be newer strategies, hopefully, for you to reflect on. And then finally, I will highlight some of the effective reader roles. So when we look at good readers, what kind of roles do they take up while they are in the reading process? So with that, we will kind of end the session. And if we have time, I'm hoping we will also uh, get into some reflection as readers, drawing from our experiences so far. Okay, now let's begin with the first question. What is reading? I have um, put three definitions on the screen: A, B, and C. I would like you to quickly read the three definitions and match them to the three types. So the first definition is a more neurological and cognitive view of reading, where the reader is an active participant. The second view of reading is a more cognitive view, where we are just looking at reading as a thinking process. And the third view is a mechanistic view, where we look at the reader as a passive recipient. So these are the three views on reading, and A, B, and C are the three definitions. Please take a couple of minutes and match the definitions with the views on reading. You can post your response in the chat box. Okay, the first response has come. 1C. Shahnawaz has posted 1C. So let's look at the third definition. Reading is a neuronally and intellectually circuitous action. So because it's talking about neurons, then obviously it's the neurological view, where we are looking at reading as a neurological and a cognitive process, enriched as much by the unpredictable indirections of a reader's inferences and thoughts as by the direct message to the eye from the reader. So this definition, as you can see, it juxtaposes the literal meaning that is presented to you through the letters and sounds of the language, and also it brings in your own interpretations of the text as a reader. So it brings both the aspects of reading into its definition. The next response has come again from the same participant, and you say it's 2A. Any other options? Any other responses? 1C is correct. 2A, 2B. That's right. It's 2B. Let's see why not A. It's 3A. That's right. So the responses are as follows: 1C, 2B, and 3A. Let's go through the other two definitions. So the second view is cognitive view, which looks at the reader as a thinker. So reading is just seen as a process that's happening inside your head, as a cognitive thinking process. And the definition that matches with it is B. Reading is no different from any other kind of thought. So when you're just sitting and thinking about something, it's the same thing when you're reading and thinking about it, except that with reading, thought is engendered by a written text. So without a written text, when you're thinking, it's a thought around something else, around an experience, around an image, around another conversation, around an object. But reading is thought around a written text. So the written text becomes the center of the thinking process. Reading might be defined as thought stimulated and directed by written language. So this is a cognitive view where the reader is a thinker, right? Let's go through the last view of reading. the mechanistic view of reading, which looks at the reader as a passive recipient. Okay, the definition is understanding a written text means the reader is extracting the required information provided by the author as efficiently as possible. So this view of reading says that a text has a meaning. Okay, there is a singular meaning, the intention of the writer. And your job as a reader is to just extract that information of what the writer wants to tell you. So this is a mechanistic view because it does not look at the reader as an active participant. It just believes that the entire power of the text is with the writer, and the reader's job is just to get what the writer intends to give you. Okay, so thanks for participating. Let's move on to the next slide and complicate these definitions a little more. So I want you to now pause for a moment and think about these three definitions. We looked at a neurological cognitive definition where we gave agency and power to the reader and the writer. Then we looked at reading as a thought process, that it is nothing but a thinking pattern around a text, which is the cognitive view. And then we looked at the mechanistic view, which says that a text has a singular meaning, singular intention by the writer, and the reader is a recipient of that information. So I want you to think about these three definitions, and you can respond in the chat box. Which of these three definitions resonate with your understanding of the reading process? You're all readers, not just in English. I'm sure you also read in other languages. Which of these three definitions match with your belief about what reading is? Do you look at it as a mechanistic process, a cognitive process, or a neurocognitive process? Take a moment and then you can post it in the chat box. Okay, so if A is mechanistic view, B is cognitive view, and C is neurocognitive. So whichever view resonates with you as a reader, you can just put that letter in the chat box. Okay, Vignesh says cognitive. Many people say neurocognitive, cognitive, neurocognitive. For me, A. Okay, Dharani says it's a mechanistic view. You read a text, you get the information that is meant for it. It's simple. Okay. Interesting. Yamuna says it's cognitive for you. Okay. So maybe the definition that resonates the most with us also reflects our relationship with the act of reading. Okay. So keep thinking about it as we move forward. The slides are changing, right? As I'm moving from one slide to another.
Yes, ma'am.
They are, right? Great. So now let's look at these three views of in a more visual format. So these views on reading can be looked at from the communication process point of view, which is the first picture here on the slide, which says that there is a message by a sender, which could be a writer or a speaker. So in this case, it's writer or even speaker, because nowadays we say we also read visual texts. So you can read a film, you can read a picture. So a visual input, not just textual input, but visual input can also become a part of the reading process, right? So the communication model says that there is a sender of the message, say the writer or the speaker or the sender, who encodes a message and puts it in a textual form. The text can be written, visual, or oral. Okay, and the receiver, the reader is seen as a receiver, decodes that intended message. Okay, this view of reading comes from the communication model to us, and as you can see, it is very similar to the mechanistic view, right, where there is a you know uh, primarily the process is from the encoder to decoder. Moving on to the next picture, where you can see a jug and a mug. Okay, so this is called the jug and mug theory. The jug and mug theory says that the reader is the recipient, is a pure recipient of the meaning, and the text is the jug. So the text is the knowledge which is being poured into the reader, and the reader simply receives. So again, it is the mechanistic view which it shows us in a picture form. Now let's look at the third picture. What do you see here? There is a hill, and the meaning of the text is at the top of the hill. And there are different readers. You can see reader A is running up the mountain, and there is also reader B. Okay, she or he is also running up the mountain. Reader A's journey, as you can see, is very different from reader B. Reader A's journey is a straight path. Reader B's journey is through a lot of forest, and there are a lot of trees, and it's a different path that the reader takes to reach the meaning of the text. So this view of reading shifts its focus from the text to the reader. So in the first few images, you can see that the primary focus is on the writer. The primary focus is on the text, on the creator of the text. However, in the second view, we give the agency to the reader. We say that the text is there and there is a meaning there, but how you reach the meaning is your personal reading process, which is different from every reader. So we both may be reading the same text, but how I'm going to read the text will be very different from how you're going to read the text. Because our journeys, our processes will be very different. And of course, this resonates with the cognitive view or the neurocognitive view, which gives the reader the primary focus in the reading process. Let's take this idea one step further. And again, I have a question for you to pause and reflect. Why do different people understand the same text differently? I may give you the same text, but different people will have different meanings out of it. What causes differences in our comprehension? What makes our role as a reader unique whenever we engage with the process of reading? What is that unique element that each reader brings to the text? Okay, again, take a few seconds to think about the question, and you can post your reactions in the chat box. Or if anybody wants to unmute and speak, that will also be great. We could collect a few responses. What leads to multiple meanings? What leads to multiple interpretation of the text? And what elements make each reader unique?
Reader's cognitive ability, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Reader's cognitive ability is very important for understanding of the topic or the text.
Okay. Reader's cognitive ability. Okay. Anything else? The process itself is different for each reader. That's right, which we saw through that hill metaphor, that you're running towards the meaning, but you're taking different paths. Okay. Perception. Right. So how you're perceiving the text. Now, why do we have different perceptions?
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Yeah. Go ahead, Priya.
Yes, ma'am. Because actually, when we are reading the text, no, every people individual will be having some experiences.
Absolutely.
Whatever we are reading, no, usually we'll use to connect with what we know before that thing.
Absolutely.
So each person will perceive in a different way because of their experiences. Like in LKG students, people will teach 1, 2, 3 in another way. In first standard student, it will be different, but both things will be connected
True.
like that.
So I
Maybe.
think the key word here is what you said, perception, which is varied because of our experiences. Okay, so the key
Yes,
word is
ma'am. Of course.
experiences.
Yes,
Each
ma'am.
reader
Experiences.
is bringing a plethora of experience which are different from each other. That's
Yes, ma'am.
the amazing
Daily
thing of
basis.
it.
That
Yes,
too in a daily
yes,
basis.
exactly. We are bringing our own knowledge systems. We are bringing our own language systems. We are bringing our own cultural knowledge. We and our own understanding of the world, our prior knowledge about the theme that we are reading on, or other texts that we have read on this on similar themes. So all these
Ma'am,
things make
it's
the
something
reader to,
pattern recognition, ma'am.
yeah.
Pattern recognition about the subject.
Exactly. The factors like subjectivity, perception, psychology, exactly. So all these host of factors make the reading process unique. So this, in a way, uh, questions or challenges the mechanistic view. So some of you said that for you, the text has one meaning and you have to get that one meaning. Okay. But maybe there is no one meaning in any text. Yeah. You can always look at the text from so many different perspectives. Okay. Let's move on. Now, whatever you all of you said about this reason for multiple meanings in a text, let us just try to put it in a vocabulary that is placed in some models of reading. Okay, so the top down processing model of reading explains precisely this: why there is differences in comprehension, why the same text is perceived differently, and um, one reason, another reason other than other reasons that you have pointed out is each reader has a different expectation from the text. Okay, the text may be same, but my reason for reading it, my expectation from the text, my purpose for reading is very different from why you are reading the text and what you are looking for, what are your expectations from the text. So reader expectation varies from text to text, from reading situation to reading situation, and that's another factor which leads to multiple interpretations. Goodman was one of the top researchers who explained this way of looking at reading, and he called it a psycholinguistic guessing game. So when we are reading, we are constantly making guesses. What are we guessing? We are trying to guess what the writer is trying to tell me. So it's a psycholinguistic, because you also said the psychology of the reader. So you are bringing in your perception, your biases. Remember, as a reader, we also carry our biases. We want to read what we want to read. Therefore, when we talk about critical reading, which you did in the previous session, you try to get out of your bias as a reader and you try to ask other questions, right? You say, okay, maybe this is how I am looking at it. How will another person look at it? Therefore, collaborative reading. So Goodman says that reading is nothing but it's a range of predictions and guesses that you are making constantly about what the writer is trying to say, and you will never know whether you were right or wrong, because these are constant guessing game that's going on. You are making predictions, you're checking in some way. If it is a factual thing, you get a immediate answer. If it is a more interpretation of the meaning, you never know whether you're right or wrong, because there is no right and wrong all the time. So it's a constant guessing game at a cognitive level. That's how the reading process is a complex one, and therefore the idea of one single meaning of the text may not be true. So some of the things that are involved in the psycholinguistic guessing game are constructing the meaning, which requires predicting content, text structure, sampling material, confirming your predictions, and correcting inaccurate predictions. So while we are reading, we make certain predictions. By the end of the text, we may want to go and change. Sometimes you will see that you read a story when you were in school, okay, and now you read the same story, the meaning will be completely different. Believe me, try this out as an experiment. You know, a story or a newspaper article, anything that you have read, say 5 years back, go back and read your own textbooks. Just go back and read your own textbooks that you read in your graduation days, or something that you really liked and you remember reading. Go back and read it now. You will see that your whole experience has changed. You're the same person, but you have evolved in this time period, and therefore your predictions about the text, your expectations about the text has changed, because you have changed every moment from the last time that you read the text. Okay, so it's a constant process where you are also evolving with the text and the interaction that you are involved in. Another view of reading which precisely explains this multiplicity of meaning in reading is the schema theoretic view. Now, the schema theoretic view is really fascinating. This is one of my favorite views on reading. It says that the main reason for miscommunication, miscomprehension, is mismatch of schema. Now, what are schema? Schema are basically these cognitive structures in our head, in our brain, through which we understand semantic meaning. Okay. Now, when you read a text and you're not able to understand, the main reason would be that there are certain, information, certain schematic information in the text that you are unaware of. And I'll give you a simple example. Suppose I read a text about a Mexican cultural experience, which I'm unaware of. I don't know how the Mexicans, cook or whatever. So suppose I'm reading something which is about their culture, about the festivals, about their food practices, and if I'm finding it difficult to understand the text, there's a high possibility that I do not have the cultural information about the Mexican cuisine and festivals. That's why there is a hurdle in my comprehension. So schemata are mental stores, and there are two kinds of schemata. One is content schema. Like I said, maybe, for example, a Vietnamese doesn't know what is Diwali. So, if I present a text on Diwali, the reader may be completely lost unless the reader makes an effort to find out what Diwali is, right? The cultural context of the festival, Deepavali. So these are content schema. Okay, and if you are very comfortable with the text, it means that your content schema is in place. You already know a lot about it, so you're not struggling. If you're struggling with the text, it means that your content schema is low. So you need to develop that. You need to do other things to fill up that schema so that your comprehension improves. The second kind of schema is formal schema. Now, formal schema is basically your knowledge about the language. Okay, so if you're very comfortable with the English language, you're able to identify the text structure, the word meanings, you're like very comfortable, your formal schema is very strong, then that will aid in your reading comprehension. If you are struggling with the language, then you will have to focus on the formal schema. Okay, you need to pay more attention to to individual words. You will have to develop word attack skills. Okay, we call them word attack skills, in the sense if there is a word which you don't understand, you have to go inside the word, you have to break it down and see from where it's coming. So these metacognitive strategies will help you deal with your gap in formal schema. So as an aware reader, when you are reading a text, it's very important for you to spend some time to activate your schema. Don't directly jump into the reading text. Priya, could you mute yourself, please? There's a lot of background noise. Priya, please mute. Yeah. Okay. So a good reader would, when a reader is approaching a text, the reader, before plunging into the text, the reader will take some time to evaluate his or her own schema, that what Is it that I already know about this theme? Does this theme seem very alien to me? Are there concepts here which are difficult for me to understand? Or do I already have a lot of background information about this topic? What am I bringing to the text? Also in terms of experiences, and also in terms of formal schema, what kind of a text is it? If it is a technical text, then you need to first fill up your gaps of jargons. You need to know the technical vocabulary and then approach the text. Most of the time, we do not strategize our reading. We directly get into the text and then we get demotivated. If I read a text on law, without doing my background work, I will get totally frustrated after 10 minutes of reading because I will not understand anything, right? So setting a purpose for reading, you need to first ask yourself, why the hell am I reading this? Okay, so why am I reading? You need to first ask yourself that question. Once you have set your purpose, you need to evaluate the matching of the schema of the text and your own background knowledge about the theme, about the text that you're going to approach. And Wallace gives a very interesting understanding of this variation from reader to reader. He says that there is never a total matching of schemas of the writer and the reader. So the writer's schema and your schema will never 100% match. And therefore, to say that I have got the perfect meaning that the writer wanted to give me is a misnomer. It's a dream. It will not happen because the writer's schemata and your schemata can never match 100%, and therefore there is always a variation in meaning and interpretation. Now let's move on to the last view on reading, which kind of foments all these arguments about subjectivity, perception, your own knowledge of the world, your schema variation, etc., etc. That is the interactive view of reading, and we subscribe to the interactive view of reading, which looks at the reader as a very active participant, where reading is not a passive skill. Reading is almost like you are constructing the meaning. Just like you construct a building, when you're reading, you're constructing the meaning. So you are actually creating. It's a creative process. Reading is a creative process because you're creating the meaning from scratch based on whatever you're bringing to the text. Therefore, the reader is again back into the focus. And I really like this last line that's there on the slide. I'll read it out for you. Pearson and Tierney says, "A thoughtful reader reads as if she were a writer, composing a text for yet another reader who lives within her." So, as an active, thoughtful reader, you are not a reader, you are a writer, because you are almost like composing the available text. You are recomposing the meaning for yourself, who is the reader. So the reader is also like a writer who is kind of, composing the meaning for himself or herself. So that kind of addresses the first two objectives of today's session. So we have discussed what is reading. We looked at 3 definitions. We reflected upon the definitions and tried to see where we stand. And then I tried to convince you that the interactive view of reading, moving away from the mechanistic view, is a better way to look at reading, because like we saw, no two readers are the same. And to explain this difference in our reading process, we looked at some of the models that provide us with the reasons, okay, about reader expectation, which varies, about different schematas that we carry, different background knowledge that we carry, different experiences that we bring to the text, and both formal schema and content schema that we bring to the text. Being aware of these reasons that lead to different reading experiences will make us more empowered and aware about what we need to do to fill up the gaps in comprehension. Now we will move on to the next segment of today's session, which is about the reading strategies. Now, before I talk about the reading strategies, I want to put it out there that for us, reading is a process. Okay, so there are 2 ways to look at reading: reading as a product and reading as a process. The product view means that how I read it is not important. what is the meaning of the text. That's the only thing I'm interested in. But what we are trying to say is, let's not just focus on the product. Let's pay attention to the process. How do we reach the meaning, that meaning that is there at the top of the hill? How am I going to reach the top of the hill? What will be my journey? What is the environment when I'm walking up the hill? I need to enjoy the fresh air. I need to enjoy the nature. I need to sit and relax a little before I reach the top. So, so we want to spend a lot of time understanding the reading process rather than jumping and reaching the top of the hill, which is the meaning. So the reading process, typically, we divide it into pre-reading, during reading, and post-reading. And a good reader is able to navigate through these different phases of reading in a very aware and conscious manner, right? So there are certain strategies that we need to be aware of in the pre-reading stage. So even before you get into the reading process, there are certain things that you can do at a cognitive level. Okay. And then, of course, when you're engaging with the text, that's a during reading process. And then post reading, after you have read, there are certain things that you can do to enhance your reading experience. So let's move to the next slide. Now, having established the point that reading is a process for us, let us see what are reading strategies. That's the key word of today's session, that we want to know what are these strategies. Now, good readers are strategic readers. Okay, they may not be aware of it, or they may be aware of it, depends. If they have been explicitly taught, then they may be aware. Many of you may be very good readers in English or in other languages, and it may be happening at a subconscious level, but you are strategic reader. If you're very comfortable accessing meaning of a text, you have been an active and strategic reader. Now, in today's session, what I'll try to do is specifically throw some light on these strategies. I'm not saying that you don't know about them. Maybe you already do them. But then maybe you're not aware of it, right? So we are just trying to raise our awareness of these strategies and check where we are with them. Now, what are strategies? Strategies are actions selected deliberately to achieve certain goals. Okay? So at this point, you may be doing something, but you're not aware of it. So what we want to do next is we want to become aware of what we are doing, ask why we are doing it, and see if it's useful for us or not, and maybe change some of our reading habits. Okay, so strategies are not subconscious. This is a difference between just reading efficiently but not knowing what makes me an efficient reader. So strategy is an action that is very deliberate. You're very aware and conscious why you are doing it, because you have a specific goal to achieve. Okay, that's the primary definition of strategy. So they are goal oriented, they are problem oriented, and they're reader initiated. Okay, strategies are initiated by readers. Nobody else can initiate it for you. You have to do it actively. Rubin says strategies are operations, steps, plans, routines used by learners to facilitate the obtaining, storage, retrieval, and use of information. So what we are trying to say is strategies are not involuntary. Strategies are not subconscious. Strategies are not something that just happens. They are very conscious, deliberate, goal-oriented actions that readers initiate to get to a particular point in their reading. Now let's move to the reading strategies. Now, could you tell me which of these strategies can we use in the pre-reading stage? Out of these strategies that are there on screen, which ones are for pre-reading? Remember, I said even before you start reading a text, you should do some things.
Review your text.
Okay, previewing a text is definitely a pre-reading strategy, right? Even before you start reading, a good reader will first
We
preview
can
the
specify a
text.
purpose for reading.
Exactly. Specifying purpose is a pre-reading task. You can't read and then say, why did I read it? Has it happened to us? It has happened to me before.
Visualizing.
Visualizing the text can happen pre, it can also happen during. Some of these strategies can be both, okay? But specifying a purpose for reading is definitely a pre-reading strategy. And a good reader will always have a very clear purpose for reading. Because, why is it so? Because if you don't set a purpose, you're going to use the wrong way to read it. Okay, for example, I'll give you a very simple example. Okay, I'm going to read a newspaper article. Now, if I don't know why am I reading it, I may end up reading the whole article word by word, line by line, worrying about every word that is there, or I don't know. It will increase my anxiety, and that's not the best way to read it, because I've not set a agenda for my reading. If I decide that, okay, I'm going to read this newspaper item, and I just want to find out XYZ. Okay, I have a very specific goal. What am I going to do? I'm not going to read the whole text. I'm just going to find those portions which give me the relevant information, and I'm going to move on. Okay, so good readers are strategic readers. They know why they are reading a text. For example, if I give you a cookbook, okay, and you want to find out the recipe for a dish, you're not going to go through each and every page. Obviously you won't. You will find out the recipe that you're looking for, and you will just go to that page. You will just look at the main ingredients, and you will go ahead. So that's what a strategic reader does. The strategic reader does not do a superficial reading all the time, does not do an intensive reading all the time. Whether you want to read a text intensively, whether you want to do a close reading. Close reading is when you read word by word, line by line, and there is a different purpose for close reading. Okay. However, if you just want to find out the main points, you're going to do a skimming. Okay, so skimming a text, this is when your purpose is to just find the global meaning. Okay, you just want to find out what is the main idea of this text, what is the main argument of this text. You don't need to read word by word, line by line. Believe me, in 2 minutes you can skim through 5 pages and you can pick out the main idea, because the main idea is held in the introduction and in the conclusion. So you're not going to go to every section. You will look at the introduction quickly. You will extract the topic sentence. Topic sentence is that sentence of the paragraph which holds the main idea. You, as a strategic reader, you will know that, okay, I just need to find out what is the main argument of this text. You can do it in a time half than your friend who is reading each and every line, each and every paragraph, and that's not going to help. So the purpose of your reading is connected with what kind of reading you're going to do. If you want to know the global comprehension of the text, skimming the text is a better idea. Skimming means looking at the introduction, looking at the conclusion, looking at the first sentence of every paragraph, looking at sections, subsections, of course the titles, headings, and understanding what is the main argument, the main idea. Okay, so that's the skimming of a text. However, there is another way of reading a text, which is called scanning. Scanning is what I was just telling you, where you already know what you're looking for. Okay, so it's not the general information, it is a specific information of the text. So suppose I give you a text and I tell you, what is the census data of 2008? You're not going to read the whole text. You're just going to go to that section which has the census report, and you're just going to tell me what you want. So scanning is very effective when you already know what specific information you're looking from the text, and you're not going to do a detailed reading. You're going to do a very strategic reading of okay. So specifying a purpose of reading is therefore very important, because as a reader you will make a host of decisions about how you're going to engage with the text. So this is a pre-reading strategy. The second is planning the reading process. This is again pre-reading, because you have to plan. So once you have a purpose, you're going to plan your reading. How much time am I going to devote? Which sections are important for me? Should I be doing a close reading of the entire text, which is not a good strategy? Which sections should I do a close reading? Which sections can I just skim and move forward? Okay, what are the main arguments of the text? What are the counter arguments that I can bring to this text based on my experience, my reading? So, planning the whole reading process, that's also pre-reading strategy. Once you've set these goals, you're going to read more effectively rather than just taking a text and beginning to read without any thinking going into it. The third is previewing a text, which some of you have said. It's a pre-reading strategy. Previewing is very simple. It's just looking at the layout, getting a feel of the text, understanding the genre conventions. In the previous session, the presenter talked about different types of reading, right? Like news items, reports, letters, emails, textbooks. These are all different genres. And every text has its conventions. So obviously a letter is going to look very different from an email. An email will look very different from a report. A report will look different from a minutes of a meeting. Minutes of a meeting will look very different from an opinion editorial in Hindu, right? So these are called genre conventions. And when you are reading anything, it's very important for you to preview the text textually, spatially, and also in terms of the structure, text structure. If it is an opinion article, then you know that, okay, it has a certain politics behind it. The newspaper has certain political, social agendas. So you will be able to become much more aware of the intention of the writer. You will be able to do your critical reading much better when you do a very critical preview of the text. So previewing from the physical, spatial previewing, looking at the text length, looking at the organization, titles, subtitles, headings, all that is, yes, previewing. But you also preview the text from the perspective of genre conventions, that what kind of a text is this? What do I already know about that particular kind of text? So once you activate all that knowledge, you are much more prepared to get into the text. Next comes predicting text content. What do you think? Is this a pre-reading or a during reading strategy?
During reading strategy.
It's both. It's both.
Pre-reading.
Pre-reading, because once you have looked at the headings, titles, subtitle, this, that, you have started predicting already. You have started setting expectations. I think this article will be useful for me because I'm looking for this information. The topic seems similar to mine. So you're already predicting based on your expectations. While reading, of course, you are constantly predicting what the writer will say next. What did the writer say before? Is there a mismatch? You're finding textual gaps. By the way, writers are not gods. Okay, they're not perfect. Every text has certain gaps. So as you are moving forward with your comprehension, you're also able to question the authority of the text, which many of us don't do. We think whatever is written on the text is just the perfect thing out there. There is nothing like perfect thing. You're constantly predicting, checking your predictions, and sometimes you can also be critical of the text that is presented to you. Okay, because there are always textual gaps. Then comes verifying the predictions. That, of course, is a during reading strategy, because once you're reading, you're able to verify, generate questions about the text. Generating questions about the text is both pre-reading and during reading. So before you start reading, it's a wonderful strategy to generate questions, because if you generate questions about the text, you're already activating a schemata based on your previous reading experiences. And as you read, you will be able to find answers to it. And, it becomes a very interesting, very interactive process. So we are trying to say that reading is not a passive activity, it's an active activity. And how do you make it active? With the help of these strategies, by making it a intellectually engaging activity for your own self. And the power lies in the reader. Nobody else will do it for you. You are going to decide how your reading experience will be. If a reading experience is boring, then it's your responsibility. If a reading experience is thrilling, that's also your responsibility. So more than the writer, the power lies with the reader through these strategies. The next is notice and analyze text structure. I think I've already discussed it in the previewing thing, that other than the spatial previewing, you also preview the text genre and structure, and you notice, what are these features of this particular text. Visualizing as you're reading, you may be visualizing certain things, that also kind of helps. And then let's move on to the last set of strategies. Locate answers to questions. This is again a post reading or during reading strategy. You can do it while reading or post reading. Compare texts to existing schemata. It's a pre-reading and a during reading. Generate inferences. What do you think? At which stage will you be generating inferences? Pre, post, during.
Post reading.
Post, also during can be, right? Like while you're reading, you can also infer. You can also do it post. So post and while. Reread can happen while reading. It can happen post reading. Monitoring your reading, trying to understand where you are. So that's also a during reading strategy. Making connections. This is a very interesting strategy, which some of you mentioned. This is also called intertextuality. So once you've read a text, or while you're reading a text, you think of other texts that you've read, and you actively compare, and you put a conversation. You create a conversation between this text and the previous text. So that's making connections and exploring intertextuality, like two texts coming together in your head. Identify and notice discourse markers to understand textual relationships. So good readers are also aware of transitions. You will be able to notice where the writer is indicating a change of idea. How are paragraphs flowing from one to another? What is the logical reasoning in the text? How is the line of reasoning, created by the writer? You will become more and more conscious of the discourse markers. For example, connectors like moreover, however, first of all. So these transition markers, you will pay more attention to them. They will help you navigate through the meaning better. And finally, evaluating the text. The merit of the text, the usefulness of the text, etc., etc. Okay, I think I just have 10 more minutes because I want to leave time for questions and reflections. So all these reading strategies that we have looked at, they can be cognitive strategies. Mostly they are cognitive strategies, that is thinking strategies, or metacognitive strategies. Metacognitive are basically strategies that help you think about the reading process, right? So which help you monitor, take decisions, etc. And there are another set of very interesting strategies which are called social and affective strategies, which I think even the previous session talked about, that reading is not just you and the text. It is also about checking meaning with other people, discussing the text, being in a collaborative setup, putting that particular text in conversation with other texts, etc. So reading also requires affective strategies. Affective means your emotional aspect that you're bringing to the text, and of course collaborative efforts to check what you understood from the text. How is it different from how others have understood it? So discussing the text with the larger community, that's also part of effective reading. Now now I'm coming to the last fag end of the presentation. So having looked at all these different strategies and saying that, okay, a good reader looks at the reading as a process, not just as a product. There is a pre-reading stage where you do certain things, then there is a during reading stage when you're aware of certain things, and so on and so forth. What are some of the effective reader roles? Okay, so Pearson and Tierney talks about 4 reader roles which are desirable for an effective reader to take up. And this is a kind of a summarizing of all that we have said in the last 1 hour. A good reader is a good planner. Okay, so you need to plan your reading process. You need to identify your goals, your purpose. You have to activate your schemata, your knowledge about the topic. You have to decide how you will identify with the text. What experiences are you going to compare with the text, right? Then so that's the planner role, which is something that is desirable. The second is the reader is a composer. Composing, because you are kind of a writer. The reader becomes a writer because you are literally redoing the text for a meaning that you want to take from it. So you search for coherence, you look for textual gaps, you are critical as a reader. So all of that is the role of a composer. Then comes the editor. So reader as an editor. Generally we think writer as an editor, but the reader is also an editor, because he or she is analyzing his or her own interpretation of the text and meaningfulness and usefulness. So you are constantly editing your expectations, your understanding. And finally, the reader must take up the role of a monitor. Okay, so the monitor determines which of these roles need to be dominant at which point of the process. So in the pre-reading stage, you cannot be an editor, right? In the pre-reading stage, you have to be a planner. So you decide at what stage am I supposed to deploy what kind of strategy, what am I doing at which stage of the reading. So that's the role of a monitor. So that brings me to the end of today's session. And I was just thinking, I think we have some time. So having said all these things, I thought we could keep around 5 minutes for us to think about these strategies, reflect which of these strategies do we use a lot or we are very comfortable doing, which of these strategies have we never tried or we have never explored, and we are very excited to go and look at those strategies when we read next. So some reflections from your previous reading experiences, if you could just take a moment to respond. You can unmute and speak, or you could use the chat box, but it would be great to listen to you where you stand with these reading strategies, your relationship with them, how many have you explored, which ones you really want to explore, and so on.
Thank you, ma'am. Student, all participants, the platform is open for any queries which ma'am has said and some reflections. Please go ahead.
Hi, ma'am. Could you suggest me if I go for the reading a comprehension and passage, and we have seen that we have some imagination power, and we are starting guessing the story would become on this way, and story would be some this type of things. So, what type of the strategy we should opt for to reading that comprehension to find out the exact meaning of the comprehension? Because we have started the let's say a story. You earlier said 10 years back you read the story, and now you are reading the story. There's much difference in that logic. So if we find out the exact logic at the same time, so what the strategies should apply for that one, and how way we read the comprehension to reach out the exact meaning and reach out to clear their question respective of that comprehension.
Okay, thank you, Varun, for those two questions. I don't know if I got your questions exactly. So if you have follow-up questions, please feel free to ask. The first thing you said was about what strategies can we deploy to read stories, right? That's what you said, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So story is a genre which is very interesting because it's narrative genre, right? And it opens itself up to multiple interpretations. So a story reading can be culturally driven. So the first thing is you need to first connect from where that story is coming. Yeah, in which cultural context has the story been written, and bringing other stories that you have read about it. First of all, what kind of a story is it? Is it a fictional story? What genre is it?
It's not about complete story of. It's about we on page paper we read the comprehension and we answer some 5 to 10% against of that one.
Okay, you're talking about assessment comprehension questions. Okay,
Yeah.
then let me talk about that. Someone is screen sharing. Yeah, right. Okay, let's go to the examination situation. Okay, when you are given a comprehension passage which you have to read and answer, it's very important for you to strategize in the sense you need to first ask yourself what are the questions. So coming back to the exam situation where you have to read a comprehension text and answer questions, the first thing is to look at the questions and find out what kind of questions are there. Yeah, once you have been able to understand what answers you need for the questions, then you can decide whether you need to skim, whether you need to scan, whether you need to do a detailed reading, because some questions are critical reading questions, for which you have to read the whole paragraph and you have to bring in your own interpretation. Some questions are factual questions. So to be able to understand what type of question has the examiner asked will help you decide the strategy. So there can be some factual questions, there can be some experiential questions, there can be some interpretive questions, open-ended questions, close-ended questions. So if you are able to pay attention to the questions and understand what is expected out of you, that might help you arrive at a desirable strategy when you are actually reading the comprehension text. Like I said, same kind of strategy throughout the text is not a good way forward. Like each and every word, each and every line, each and every paragraph, you can't read the same way, right? You have to vary how you are reading different parts of the text depending on what you want from the text. So to locate the answers, you also need to deploy different strategies depending on the kind of answers that you're looking for, the kind of questions that are posed to you. So that kind of an evaluation will surely help you tackle reading comprehension. So Pavitra, here is the PPT. How to generate interest in reading the text, which I don't find interesting. Ravi, yeah, very genuine, very honest question. How do we develop an interest for reading, right? I would say start reading on topics that you're interested in. If you are struggling to develop a reading habit, it's best to begin with topics that are very close to your heart, where you're very passionately invested. Yeah, so identify your interest areas. Suppose sports, you're a sports enthusiast. Read as much as you want about sports. Pick up an autobiography of a sports person, an iconic sports person, whatever it is. So I would say if you are a person who struggles with reading, begin where your interest lies. Once you have developed reading stamina, because reading stamina you have to develop it, you're not born with reading stamina, okay? So once you have developed the reading stamina, then any topic is given to you, you will be able to approach the reading process with joy and excitement, because you will then go beyond the topic itself. You will be very interested to know what it is. I mean, it's like developing curiosity. So developing a reading habit is connected with developing curiosity, which has to begin first with your interest areas. So my suggestion to you is start where it seems most easy. That is, read what you like first. After you have developed a reading stamina, then you go to other, reading of other texts and other themes, and you expand your horizon of interest. Thanks for that candid question. How to consistently maintain a reading habit? So, reading is almost also like a routine. You have to, just like writing, reading, writing, both these skills, like Darwin talks about how writing, reading, literacy is not evolutionary. So we are not really born with the capability to learn how to read and write. We are born with the capability to speak. Speech is more evolutionary and basic, but not writing and reading. So writing and reading is difficult. By nature, it's difficult. It's almost like learning to cook, learning to bake, learning to swim, learning something new. So it is difficult. So first, I think we need to accept that reading, writing are difficult, and we need to put in effort. We need to set aside time. We need to get into a discipline. So you may think, other than all the reading that you're doing for your MBA and course, you should just think that, okay, once a week, I'm going to spend 1 hour where I'm going to read for pleasure. So it has to begin with something small. It's almost like getting into an exercise routine, getting into a yoga schedule, or getting into going to a gym or something like that. So reading, writing, both, even writing, you know. And annotating is a very important skill. We couldn't talk about everything, but after you've read something, write something immediately about it. You can start maintaining a reading diary, like you've read something, even if you've read a post on social media, right? Suppose you read a post on social media, write a couple of sentences about your reaction, your feeling. You'll be amused to see look at your own journal after a while. So it is something that you have to start at the level of a personal commitment, to build your reading habit and stamina. While reading, my thought and imagination running quickly after the sentence, how can you stay focused on the textual content? Yeah, true. Reading is sometimes a meditative process, right? You need to really be with the text. I would say if you're a reader who gets distracted very quickly, it might be useful for you to take help of other modalities. So if the written text is not working for you, find out a video around the text. Watch the video first and then read the text. That will help you to focus better on the text, because after you have engaged with the theme through some visual material, through some documentary, through some YouTube instructional material, once you've explored the topic, the theme, through other modalities, and then you enter the text, you will be more motivated to read. So that also helps a lot. In fact, we do that for our students in class also. Students who are not very comfortable with reading, we first discuss all the topic through other modalities, and that's totally fine. Once you have developed interest in that topic, then you can go into a deep and intensive reading. You will find your experience will be different. That is if you struggle with the written text. How to remember what we have read? While reading, I understand the text but not recall after a few weeks. So one thing that I mentioned about annotation. So as you are reading something, quickly make a summary. Let it be a 2-line summary, 3-line summary, but write something. Don't just read and let it go and in thin air. Maintain a writing journal based on the reading that you're doing. That will help you to kind of recall better. Also, recalling becomes difficult when you don't assimilate the information. When you look at the information as discrete, the moment you put the information in a context, you will remember better. Okay, so for instance, suppose, in fact, I had a text for all of you, but there is no time for it. This is a very interesting editorial on the price for an MBA. Okay, it talks about the fee structure and challenges of MBA programs. So while I was reading the article, there are a lot of data and a lot of statistics and a lot of information that I may not remember unless I put those information in context. Okay, so a particular MBA program costs so and so, in a particular year there were so many MBA graduates. Those information may become very discrete if I don't understand them or put them in context. So one way to improve your recall, one is of course writing along with reading, summarizing, paraphrasing, annotating. These are the 3 writing skills that go hand in hand with reading and helps recall. Okay, the second is what I said, actively bring in a context. Give a context to your reading, then you will be able to remember the information more effectively. Okay, I think I have okay, there is one more question from Jayalakshmi. How can we engage lower class students in reading? Are there any strategies? Okay, maybe you're talking about children and parenting. We find it so difficult to engage our children and get them into reading habit. Like I said, begin with visual. Yeah, so once they have kind of become very comfortable with the visual medium and you're not stopping them from engaging with the visual medium, you bring in reading texts for children, or even adults with lower proficiency, which are visually appealing. Okay, so for instance, I'll talk about a genre that both adults and children love: graphic novels. Okay, many of us get put off when a fat book is given to you and you have to read 300 pages, a novel. We may not like it, so you choose a graphic novel. Graphic novels even adults can read, you know, they're amazing. they are they're very, very powerful, very imaginative, very creative, very visually appealing. So you can play around with the genre. You know, genre is in text type. Most of the time we choose text types that are not motivating us, so you can change your strategy. Read short stories, 2-page stories. Tell whoever you are trying to encourage, they can begin with a short story. They don't have to read a long story, or they can begin reading certain social media debates. You know, they can listen to some debates on the television and read the opinion article. Or, you know, like I said, graphic novels are is one genre that, like, people love to explore. And you know, so vary the genres that you're choosing for yourself. If you are only reading one kind of text, it might not be working. Thank you, ma'am. Ravi says, how to remember what we have read. Okay, I think we have already answered that. I think we are almost reaching the end of our session, and lots of very, very interesting questions, I must say. It's the fag end of the day. You guys already sat through a session before me. So despite that, you stayed till the end. I really appreciate your patience and your excitement and enthusiasm with which you participated. And I hope that you will be able to find some interesting connections between this session and the previous one. And I wish you all the best in your journey of exploring who you are as a reader. So thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.
So you have done, madam?
Yes, I'm done.
Very good, very good. So our products are doing excellent outside, and then you need to train your products and make them excellent like that only. Very good. Thank you very much, really, because this is, dear student, this is an excellent opportunity, and we try to identify actually our own students, former students, and they are excellent actually faculties who are working in different actually central institutions. Both actually, first lecturer and second lecturer, both are actually from the central institution. That to the product of the Pondicherry University. That's a great thing, of course. They are coming back and contributing to you, and you must make use of this opportunity. And I would like to thank both of them and to contributing, of course, helping us. And we'll be doing that. We would like to do some more. Maybe what I want actually, we want to make use of and do research, which will be helpful to you and to helpful to us also. So
Yes,
because
sir.
maybe we may have to sit and do maybe another this one some kind of a meeting, online meeting.
Yes.
So why can't we do a project on reading habits of these students?
That would be wonderful. I think a lot of Indian context has not been explored much.
Recently, I've done a project, and the publication, maybe I'll share it with you. The reading habits of this one, the research scholars and PG students, which we have done and compared, and that is coming in a peer-reviewed journal. Maybe I'll share with you that article.
Sure.
And
Yes,
then
sir,
I haven't actually prepared already. The questionnaire is there. We'll improve putting in your actually the inputs also, and we can just open this one, design a Google form and send it, run it, and I could do it. That will be really useful. And you being a faculty, that will be useful there also. It will be useful for here also. And overall,
Sure.
the input whatever is giving to students, that will be helpful to improve their reading habits.
Absolutely, sir.
Right? If you are agreeing, definitely we will do that. There's no problem, because I'm reading apps. I've done 2-3 papers, not one. So we have done actually mobile reading habits, normal reading habits, all sorts of things. I have, I think, not 2-3. I have more than that. So this, I think, if you agree, definitely we'll do that. Soon actually we will interact with you after the workshop. We'll do this. Not a problem. right?
Yes, sir.
So
Sure. Thank you so much.
once again, from the DDE side, from the university side, and from my side, being a director, of course, I would like to thank you for sparing the valuable time, of course, and helping our students. And this is being a silver jubilee year. We will be doing actually many more. This is the workshop, which is a 4 days. I was with VP. That time actually he appreciated so much. And we recently, the last month, we have done 4 international classes. And the next week we are going. Hello. Now next month, actually, the first week we are going to do another actually 4 international lectures. So like that, actually several actually the national international events we are going to do that. And I'm happy our own alumni is participating in the university events, and I will contribute to that. So once again, thank you very much. And
Thank you so
students,
much.
tomorrow I think is the free day for you. Today is only 430 people attended. I expect tomorrow 750, 800, not less than that. So spread the message to all the students. Try to join. As I told you already, we will be giving a physical certificate, which is difficult for you to get. 1 week actually the workshop certificate, rarely you get it. That we are going to give. And at the university, from university side, we are going to give. That's really good for your future career endeavors. Okay. So thank you very much. Tomorrow, we'll see you tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock.